Good morning, everyone. Um, Welcome to this kind of unique presentation. And I say unique because I will challenge you to find another session that has two technologies that are separated by over 40 years in the same slide. So I'm Jorge Lopez. I'm Director of Product Marketing for Sensor. And I have with me Matt Randway, Director of Product Marketing for Cloudera. And together we'll talk about a little bit of the challenges and opportunities for leveraging mainframe data and also uploading batch processing from the mainframe into Hadoop. So I guess that if you are here at this presentation is because either you are a little bit familiar with mainframes or somewhere in your organization they have a mainframe. So you wouldn't be surprised to hear that mainframes still play a very big role in many organizations. In fact, over 70% of the Fortune 500 organizations today still rely on mainframe to support their most critical applications. And that probably explains why mainframe capacity continues to grow at a very healthy pace of over 15% every year. Now, when we talk to these organizations, it's not uncommon to hear that up to 80% of their corporate data goes through the mainframe. So that's a lot of big data. And organizations know that they cannot neglect that data. However, until recently, the real question was, can they afford to analyze it? And to understand this question, we need to understand first how mainframes work. Mainframes provide extreme performance and reliability at a premium. So you end up with expensive storage and expensive processing. Now, if you're familiar with mainframes, you know that in addition to the cost of your hardware, every month you will get a bill based on CPU utilization, commonly measured in terms of MIPS. That means that the more you process on the mainframe, the more you pay. Now, when it comes to storage, storage costs can reach sometimes up to 100K per terabyte. And that's because a lot of the mainframe data is still backed up to tape. Now, when you add it all up, that means the typical 10 billion organization is spending around $16 million every year just to operate the mainframe. Now, the good news is that now Hadoop, for the first time, is offering a more realistic approach to leverage all the mainframe data. And that's why it's not uncommon to hear that a lot of mainframe organizations are looking into Hadoop. In fact, I will almost bet you that any company here in New York who has a mainframe probably has a Hadoop initiative. And normally the focus is around two key areas. The first one is provide new insights by combining previously untapped mainframe data with all the new sources of big data, clickstream data, sensors, mobile, social media, etc. The second area is to reduce costs. Who doesn't want to reduce costs today? And they do that by uploading data and also uploading batch, COBOL, and JCL processing into Hadoop. Now that sounds like a great idea. Just kind of call your mainframe guy, dump all the data into an FTP server, and then you can take it from there, right? Well, the reality is actually very different. There are a lot of steps and complicated steps to get the data, just the data, out of the mainframe into Hadoop. You have to deal with SMS compression. You have to find the data, where in the mainframe resides. Normally copying, filtering, understand COBOL copybooks, data translation, etc. But the point is that every time something changes, you have to go through all this process again, and it involves a lot of time, money, and effort. So the real picture actually looks a lot more like this. And that's just the beginning. There are a lot of different gaps that you have to bridge between big iron and big data. And the way I like to talk about this is in terms of four key characteristics. First, you have integration gaps. Hadoop is certainly becoming this kind of operating system for big data. It's very scalable, it provides a lot of tools and services. But when it comes to the mainframe, it doesn't have connectivity and, well, just support for the mainframe. So when it comes to data translation, connecting to the mainframe, etc., you are on your own. The second one is expertise gaps. Both of these groups, and that's a common denominator, they are experiencing a shortage of skills. So in the case of the mainframe, it's because people are retiring. In the case of Hadoop, there's a huge demand for Hadoop developers. Now you can imagine trying to find a person that understands both technologies. That's really hard. Then you have security gaps. The fact is, if you cannot provide secure access and then processing and the distribution of mainframe data, your big data initiative won't go very far. And we also have costs. To understand this, basically it means any additional processing that you do on the mainframe, it's going to cost you money. To upload data, you have to sort the data, you have to copy it. All that processing is additional money on the mainframe. And finally, there's a fourth variable, and for that one, we normally like to use the concept of the suits and hoodies, which was introduced by Gartner actually to describe this gap. And it's a huge generational gap between these two groups. They are separated by over 4 decades. And you can understand they have different interests, they have different ways of approaching problems, they have different concerns. So, for instance, for the mainframers, or the suits, the main concerns are usually reliability, accuracy, performance, security. For Hadoopers, and I don't mean to stereotype, but usually it's all about delivering measurable results very quickly, get to the bottom line. So part of the challenge here is to kind of help these two worlds understand their mutual concerns and work together towards a common goal. And that's when SimSort and Cloudera come into the picture. Our solution combines decades of mainframe expertise, 40 years of mainframe leadership, with unique expertise and state-of-the-art capabilities for Hadoop. And with that, we provide a much painless and seamless approach to leverage all your data and upload batch processing from the mainframe into Hadoop. So our joint solution basically helps you close all these functional gaps, the cost gaps, the integration gaps, so that you can ingest, process, and distribute mainframe data with Hadoop. So over the course of this presentation, we will show you how the solution can help you connect directly to the mainframe without having to install any software or any additional software on the mainframe, then translate the data from the multitude of mainframe formats to ASCII, understand the COBOL copybooks, and then load it into HDFS. And once it's there, you can develop a lot of processes, sorting, joins, complex data flows to basically leverage this data with Hadoop and without having to write any code. All of this, of course, with the massive scalability that Hadoop provides. So let's get started with Hadoop. And for that, I have Matt here.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you to SimSort for the opportunity to present with you today. So, I assume folks are reasonably familiar with Cloudera being at this event, but just by way of introduction, Cloudera, founded in 2008, was the first in its state, the leading provider of Hadoop in the enterprise, an open source data management platform. And if you heard Mike Olson's keynote the other day, you heard about how Hadoop is really evolving beyond just open source core technology to really become viewed as an enterprise data hub at the center of your data management strategy. And so working with that data hub are all of your existing systems like the mainframe systems. And so that's why we're very excited to work with SimSort on this kind of solution to really bring more information into the decision process. So Cloudera really, from a platform perspective, gives you everything you need to build an enterprise data hub. So not just infinitely scalable storage at a very cost-effective price point, not just batch processing, but also all the different ways you're going to want to interact with that information once you've got it together, giving you interactive SQL capabilities so you can connect your BI tools, your existing decision management systems to it. You've got an enterprise search system so that the users who don't even know how to use a BI tool, don't want to, interact directly with the data in that system. your analytic frameworks, your SaaS revolution, all your data scientists can bring their skills directly to that data hub platform. From the administration perspective, everything you need to make it simple to deploy, to manage, to monitor, to maintain, to meet the enterprise requirements, because it's what they mentioned. The data that you've got in your mainframe is going to be highly sensitive. It's critical to the business. So just putting it into this data lake, as some have referred to it, simply isn't sufficient. You need to have governance controls, you need security. And so providing that as part of that data hub is really critical. Beyond just the product, though, there's other things you'll need as well. You'll need to skill up your people, so providing comprehensive training. Flutter has trained over 20,000 people so far. In fact, 85% of the world's professionals skilled in Hadoop have been trained by Flutter. So chances are, on the open job market, you're going to find somebody who knows how to use the platform, trained up by Flutter. And also, of course, since this will probably be the first time you've tried to deploy a data hub, tried to deploy Hadoop, you'll need some assistance, and we're happy to provide that through services. But in terms of why Cloudera, why do customers choose to use Cloudera with SyncSort together? There's really three things I want to talk about. First of all is that platform. So again, Hadoop is really foundational to solving business problems, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient. You really need, once you've got all your data in one place, a variety of ways to access that data. Otherwise, you've just got another data silo. So not only is it connecting to existing systems like SyncSort, you can pull data in and push data out, but being able to bring your existing skill set, your existing analysts, your existing decision processes to the data, rather than having to move the data out to other silos and create more silos, just to answer a question. So if you take a look at not just how you can access data more with the Cloudera Data Hub, but also giving you the enterprise-grade capabilities around security, metadata management, governance, lineage, access control, all of these things you need to really trust in the system to become that center of your data universe. Beyond just technology, though, customers work with Cloudera because fundamentally it's about one thing: delivering customer success. So having worked with over 65% of the Fortune 500 and looking forward to working with many in the future, we really remove the risk of working with open source technology. You could go download Apache Hadoop and try to set it up yourself, and many have succeeded. But ultimately, for today's large enterprises, they don't want to have that kind of expertise. They don't want to have the need to stitch together disparate ecosystem projects, track releases, figure out how do I upgrade, how do I patch. They want to install enterprise software and get the same guarantees, the same support, the same trust in the system that they do from working with existing vendors. And that's one of the things that we provide. So that support, that risk mitigation, we'll talk about some of the management tooling, how that helps in the future. Expertise. So again, having worked with customers like yourselves, I guarantee you in whatever industry you're in, we've helped solve your problem for another customer, and we'd love to tell you how. So finally, influence. So as the leading contributors to the Hadoop ecosystem, we're driving the platform forward, not just in the open source core, but in the ecosystem around that open source core. And so working with us, you really get to get your requirements directly into the project lifecycle. You get to drive with us the future of the platform. And then finally, maybe most important, the reason we're really up here today is ecosystem matters. So just because we're talking about the data hub, that's not a siloed system. It really matters how do you work with all of your existing investments. You're not going to replace your mainframe. You're not going to replace your data warehouse. You're not going to replace your content management system. They're all going to work together with the data hub at the center of that future state strategy. And so in that world, it's critical that you have every one of your existing ecosystem vendor partners, all of your SI partners, all of your hosting providers, your hardware partners, working with that system. So we've built relationships with over 700 companies, from SIs to ISVs, to hosting providers, cloud providers, really anywhere you want to run Cloudera, anywhere you want to run your system, any system you want integrated with, to provide data, to access that data, you can integrate it with the system. So SyncSort's really been a fantastic partner in making that a reality to bring the benefits of Data Hub to the mainframe audience.
So I guess the next logical question is why SyncSort, or who is SyncSort? Well, we are a leading big data company that specializes on helping you collect, process, and distribute massive data volumes. Our history actually goes back 40 years ago on the mainframe. For 40 years, we have provided the fastest sort engine in the market, and recently also the fastest ETL engine. Now, we recently released also our first Hadoop ETL, that it's tightly integrated with the framework, with Cloudera specifically. And now, if you have a mainframe, chances are that you have heard about SyncSort. That's because we run on over 50% of the mainframes in the world. And when talking to our customers, a lot of our customers told us we have Hadoop initiatives, and we are looking to leverage mainframe data with Hadoop as well. And that's where also Hadoop came into the picture. So when we started to look at this, we realized that mainframe and Hadoop have some common denominators. We talk about the gaps, but there are also some similarities. Both provide highly distributed frameworks to process massive data volumes. They are also very good at batch processing, and they both are highly dependent on sort. If you look at the mainframe, up to 80% of batch processing involves sorting data. Now, if you look at Hadoop, both the map and the reduce space are highly dependent on sort as well. So given our expertise on that domain, we developed a series of contributions to the open source community focused on improving batch processing through sort. Now, this means that now anyone the result of these contributions are that now anyone can plug their own sort into the framework. And that includes, obviously, SyncSort sort. But more importantly is that also with that, you open up the doors for other use cases, sophisticated use cases of data processing, and also more efficient batch processing with SyncSort. Now, our contribution also enables us to seamlessly plug SyncSort software directly into the MapReduce framework. And this way, SyncSort can run as an integral part of your Hadoop cluster, basically making it easier for you to ingest data, to process and distribute data with Hadoop. In other words, what we are delivering is basically turning your Hadoop cluster into a full-feature ETL solution. To basically move all your data, including mainframe. Specifically, we have a graphical user interface with a comprehensive library of transformations, so you can develop complex MapReduce ETL jobs without the need to write any code, IP, etc. We also provide a single tool to connect to all your data sources. And also, one thing that is very important, the approach is very different because we don't generate code. The ability, these contributions have made it really our tool, an integral part of the Hadoop cluster. So by not generating code, we are able to provide all the benefits and ease of use of having a graphical user interface, but without having to compromise on performance. And the last point, of course, we support basically, we have leading support for leveraging all your mainframe data and uploading batch processing from the mainframe into Hadoop, and we will see specific capabilities in the next few slides. So, why is this important? Well, one of the reasons working with mainframes is so difficult is because mainframe storage from the beginning was very expensive and was very limited. So a group of very smart people came up with some formats to allow you to save storage. These formats are FCD, packed decimals, COM3, etc. So for example, by using packed decimals to store your numeric data types, you can save up to half the space. Now that's pretty good for when it comes to storage savings. But the issue is that now your data is not readable, so you cannot understand what it means. So in addition to that, that's the easy part. The easy part is just, well, I can manually write a program to convert from FCD to ASCII, for example. That's the easy part. The difficult part is then you have that the metadata in the mainframe is stored on these things called COBOL copybooks. So that means they are stored also separately. You have the data and the metadata stored separately. Now you have to basically map that metadata to your data in order to know what it really means. And then on top of that, you have other instructions such as redefines, occurs depending on, etc. So you can imagine it's kind of complex. Now the good news is that we have figured it out and solved all these challenges, so you don't have to worry about them. First of all, SyncSort allows you to connect directly to the mainframe without requiring you to install any additional software on the mainframe. Once you're there, you pull the data. We can translate on the fly all the complex mainframe formats to ASCII. And we also support COBOL copybooks, so you can actually understand your data. Once we've done all that, then you can load it into Hadoop, and once it's in Hadoop, you can develop complex data flows with a graphical user interface. So you get everything without having to write a single line of code. No COBOL, no Java, no Pig, no Kite, etc. If we talk about security, mainframes have earned certainly a reputation in this space for being very reliable and very secure. That's why they manage the most sensitive data. If you think of ATM transactions, financial transactions, healthcare records, telco, etc., all of them are managed by mainframe. And that's why security is a big deal for mainframe. I guess if you miss a tweet, it's not such a big deal, but if you miss a financial transaction, you could end up in jail. And when companies start to look at their Hadoop initiatives, security can be a severe roadblock. For instance, we had a customer advisory board meeting a few months ago, and we find a number of instances where after months of researching, prototyping, POCs, etc., the mainframe group will shut down the Hadoop initiative just because of security. And that happened like in 5 minutes. So why is that? Well, many companies claim to have mainframe connectivity. But what really happens is that they require you to install additional software on the mainframe. And in addition to that, they have their own security models. So first of all, for the mainframe group is like, you have an untested, unproven piece of software that you want to install in my box, good luck with that. Second, you have your own security framework, and then now I have to synchronize my own the enterprise standard with your model. Again, good luck with that. So with SyncSort, what we offer is connectivity to allow you to pull the data directly from the mainframe and leading support for Kerberos and LDAP, which basically allows you to adopt your enterprise standard security. We have that for to provide secure data loads and extracts, as well as secure job execution. And again, that's 0 MIPS on the mainframe, 0 additional MIPS on the mainframe, no software required. Now, when we talk about the economics, well, the truth is that a lot has been said about the cost of managing 1 terabyte of data. I bet you have seen a lot of slides like this. Most vendors will do our own versions, but I guess what you will find is that the estimates vary widely, right? And that depends on what you consider or what you factor into those figures. But the point is that managing 1 terabyte of data in Hadoop is typically up to 2 orders of difference compared to the mainframe. So in terms of a business case, it's a really compelling business case to, again, upload mainframe data into Hadoop. And now what follows is what makes this solution enterprise ready. And for that, again, Matt.
Thank you. And I just want to sort of reiterate that. So it's not just about the cost effectiveness, although that's extremely compelling. That's a great way to justify the cost of a project, but also imagine what you could do if you could get that data out of the mainframe and start to put it into a system where you could surface it to beyond analytic processes, surface it to users who can never access it before, and do so in a way where every time you have a new question, you don't have to come back to that mainframe guy and say, hey, can I please have another slice of your time? Can I please have another sitting session with you to figure out the data model? Can we please try to figure out how to join this with some other piece of data? Once you can pool that somewhere else, you can really start to think differently about how you try to leverage that data. So shifting over to the administration side as well. So it's really important to, in fact, actually, I think a macro theme for all of this is trying to make Hadoop and big data not that complicated. You know, in the beginning, years ago, you came to this conference, you hear people talking about all these different animals and these different menagerie of different projects, and that's great and that's exciting. But we all know that for this to end well for all of us, this has to turn into an enterprise-grade technology, and that means it has to walk, talk, quack, bark, whatever, like any software you've bought in the last 10, 20 years. So that's really where the focus of Clutter and Sync sort of lies. So I wanted to talk a bit about, from the management side, what that looks like. Because as you'll notice if you're ever trying to work with Hadoop, it sounds simple. It's just a clustered set of processes working together in distributed harmony to do work for you. But the reality is when you actually deploy it in the enterprise, you'll find out that it's more than 12 processes running on every server, across racks, maybe across data centers. And there is no open source standard for management for any of this software. So what we provide is end-to-end management for this entire ecosystem of projects so that you have one enterprise-grade management experience. And really what this is about is making Hadoop easy. That's it. That's the one thing this does. So making installation, deployment, upgrades, monitoring, management trivial exercise. You go to one interface and see the status of everything happening in your cluster so that what seemed like a daunting task, an insurmountable administration task, just becomes trivial. And instead of needing a team of highly specialized Hadoop ninjas, you can now use one or two sysadmins who know how to use Linux. And you can just drop them on the system, and all of a sudden they're humming along happily. And by the way, this integrates with all your existing management tools for general purpose monitoring. So beyond just Hadoop, though, we've seen a lot of partners really take to the benefit of Hadoop and bringing compute to data. That's a theme that's come up a number of times at the conference. The core premise of Hadoop is rather than have to move your data every time you want to do a different style of computation, different kind of access, you bring those forms of access to the data. So if I want to ask an analytic question, rather than have to copy a set of data out to an analytic entity database, now I can leave the data exactly where it is in its original fidelity, and now I can bring that analytic processing directly to it through an open source product like Clutter and Apollo. But it turns out that many other companies see that same benefit of bringing compute to data. So a lot of our partners have also decided, hey, that makes sense. We're going to put our products on the Hadoop cluster to get it closer to where the data lies, local compute, local storage. And SyncSort saw exactly the same opportunity and said, we're going to deploy our software on your cluster as well. So it scales better, performs better, it's easier to manage. But the last mile of that management story is central mismanagement. And so we've been very happy, very proud to work with SyncSort to deliver the next generation of Clutter Manager, which provides extensibility to third-party products like SyncSort. So our integration is not just how you run the ETL jobs, but how you monitor and manage them. So now you can actually install, deploy with one-click SyncSort on your entire cluster. You can observe its processes running on the cluster. You can check the status of all your logs from one place. So again, it's about managing the ecosystem like any other piece of enterprise-grade technology. It's about making it just dirt simple to set up this entire stack and start getting to the benefits instead of worrying about the technology. That's really where we're investing for you. So actually, I thought it'd be useful, or I thought it'd be useful to give you an example of a customer that's been doing exactly this. So, okay.
Thanks, Matt. And just want to highlight also that this is really one of the big pieces that makes it enterprise ready, and that gives peace of mind to the suites or the mainframers, because they are used to these kind of tools to develop, to deploy, to monitor, to administer, and they can, when they see this, it's really useful for them. It's kind of removing, again, another gap. Okay, so now we've seen the entire solution. Let's get real with a customer case study. For this case study, we have a major U.S. bank who manages close to 120 billion in assets and is a member of the S&P 500. This bank selected, obviously, Cloudera for their Hadoop distribution and started to migrate mainframe data into Hadoop with relative success, migrating simple scenarios over the course of 6 months. Now, after that, they started to find more complex scenarios, and that's when they hit a roadblock. For example, at some point, they spent several weeks trying to understand a cold copybook with 86 pages, you can imagine, and then kind of move that data. Up to that point, all the effort has been focused on manually reading through the cold copybook and trying to map the data. But obviously, there's always errors in the data. It's not perfect. So the point I want to make here is, again, it's critical to realize it's not just about writing code to translate from Netscape to ASCII. It's about understanding what really your data means. And that's when Syncsor came into the picture. So after spending a total development time of 4 hours, we were able to understand the COBOL copybook, kind of map all the data and understand where the errors in the data were. And after validating the COBOL copybook, we connected to the mainframe as well. We pulled all the data and we loaded everything into HDFS. Now, all of this was performed without writing a single line of code. No COBOL, no Pig, no Hive, no Java, etc. Of course, they love that, but they also love the fact that now they have a lot more control over the timing, because they don't have to call the mainframe guy all the time. They can just pull the data from the mainframe. In addition, they got a lot of productivity gains. That means basically they don't have to write code. They also have a much better documented process, because you have graphical jobs instead of lines of code. And also they have reusability. And finally, this enabled, obviously, non-Java developers, existing skills within the enterprise, to approach some of these complex scenarios. And we are not talking about specifically mainframe and Hadoop experts, but their existing staff. Okay, so before we go, I thought we will leave you with some also kind of takeaways from what we have learned when talking to our customers. And of course, we could have a week of sessions just talking about best practices. But step number one, bring all the teams together early in the process. It's very important for them to work together to understand the concerns and the interests, as well as identify critical mainframe applications as well as critical mainframe data. The fact is, as Matt said, the mainframe is not going away. It's here to stay. But there's a real opportunity for Hadoop to help you better rationalize all these valuable but expensive resources on the mainframe by offloading the data and batch processing into Hadoop. Number two, identify your business objectives. Are you here to provide new insights or to reduce costs or both? And once you do that, it will help you kind of shape your strategy. And number three, create a roadmap that gradually allows you to build your skills within your organization. You cannot learn to run if you haven't learned to walk. So the recommendation here is maybe you can start by copying data from the mainframe, Then once you're familiar, you're starting, you resolve your connectivity issues, then you can probably migrate for good and also start uploading some of those JCLs and COBOL programs for batch processing. And of course, when it comes to technology solutions, I do think we have a unique solution with SingSort and Cloudera that makes it enterprise ready to allow you to upload your mainframe data and processing into Hadoop. We are kind of that unique solution that it's both. It speaks both languages. It speaks Hadoop and it speaks mainframe. And actually, the plan was that I would wear my mainframe shirt, but we haven't seen it. But we also have another side. So on the mainframe side, as I said, we run on 50% of the world's mainframe. On the Hadoop side, we have made significant contributions to the open source community. We have worked very closely with the leaders in the space to make it a very integral solution. And thanks for all your support and help, Matt. And of course, we support the leading distributions of Hadoop. And we were working with the leaders who happen to know, I think, or two about Hadoop, right? So I think that's all we have for today. We are almost right on time, I think. So I don't know if we have time for questions or.
Quick question. So when the CPU load from the main for reading the data off, is that developable? Or is that still on GPUs?
Well, that's an interesting question. Actually, last one. I need to repeat the question. So the question is for basically the connectivity in general and offloading the data from the mainframe, can it be done on the zip engines? And that's a very good question. We actually have, SingSort has a product called MFX that can actually allow you to upload a lot of that data preparation to the zip engines, so you don't incur additional costs on your mainframe. So you can do copies, you can do sorting and other operations on the zip engines. And that's a very good point, because a lot of mainframe organizations have zip engines and they are not really leveraging that investment.
So what you said there, MFX is a product that would allow you to offload that processing to zip engines if you have them, right? So they don't have to
Yes.
that overhead for GPU.
You don't need to have it,
Right,
but if you have it, we provide the ability to upload like copies and sorts into the zip engine. And presumably, if you're gonna offload the data, you're gonna do a lot of copying, right?
So you basically have the choice to either install MFX and get that benefit, right, or not, and just use GPU.
Yeah, and in general, MFX is I mean, you don't need it for this, but and a lot of organizations, SingSort MFX is the software that actually runs on over 50% of the mainframes today, and they were not even thinking about Hadoop, right? They were just sorting data, copying, doing data processing on the mainframe. So you mean after it is in Hadoop? Thanks, Steve. Yes, yes. So the answer is, do we have capabilities to connect directly to DB2 on the mainframe? The answer is yes. Yes. I think we have time for one last question. Actually, that's an excellent question. You can go to our website, and actually we have a test drive, and one of our featured use case accelerators, you will see a video that shows you in 5 minutes how you can do a CDC process that involves mainframe and Hadoop. Yes. Now we have an example that is almost like filling the blanks. Yes. Yes. Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Matt, for your help. It was great, and thank you everyone for your attention.